on 936 ABC Hobart. This is Louise Saunders.
The Senate inquiry conducting its investigation into the regulation of the fish farm industry in Tasmania, sitting in Hobart today. It's also a day, in fact, for 2 days now, we've had the state government out making announcements and talking up the success and the importance of the fish farming industry to Tasmania and the way in which they say it is working effectively and well. However, there are other sides to the story, and there is some concern too that the inquiry is not getting all the information that it needs, if I can put it that way. With me from Environment Tasmania is Rebecca Hubbard. Rebecca, good afternoon.
Hi, Louise.
Sometimes inquiries, you tend to wonder whether they're worth it, whether they're coming from a preconceived idea, if not everyone's engaged in being part of it, whether it's worthwhile. Why is this one worthwhile?
Well, I actually think that the most worthwhile thing around this Senate inquiry is that it's an opportunity to really talk about some of the issues that are critical to the regulation of the fish farming industry and get some information on the table, which has actually been one of the biggest problems that we've had with the aquaculture industry in Tassie.
I think there's two ways. One is, to some people, it's a process by which there's a decision made as to whether fish farming is good and should happen or bad and shouldn't happen. Is it black and white, or is it more, as you say, the refinement of how things are done and how they can be done better?
It's absolutely not black and white, and of course very little in life is black and white. Yeah. What it is looking at how well is the regulatory system around aquaculture in Tassie, and absolutely the inquiry offered an opportunity, or still offers an opportunity for the regulation to be reviewed and discussed in terms of, is it effective, is it transparent, is it the best management system in place that we could have and that we need? And obviously there's a range of views being put forward on that.
Are we getting all the views that are necessary? There's been some concern that the government is not playing its part in contributing to this.
Well, we were certainly disappointed with the amount of information that the state government supplied. Certainly the Environmental Protection Agency didn't present to the hearing. I'm not sure if they were asked or not, but certainly we would have thought they had an important role to play as in terms of managing pollution and protecting the environment. Certainly other people who I believe have concerns around the industry didn't make representations because they wanted to remain anonymous and were concerned around exposing themselves. So there's certainly, different reasons for why some people haven't.
Are those people working in the industry? Are they scientists? What sort of area do they come from? Can you say?
Yep, I've certainly heard from scientists who wouldn't make submissions, because some people who've worked in and around the industry who wouldn't make submissions, and that was because of concerns around, their positions and research funding, etc. But of course, we really feel like the government could have given a lot more information and been much more engaged, either proactively or requested by the committee.
Well, the government for the last couple of days has released a report and has also endorsed a report and has also been talking today with one fish farm area to talk about the importance of the industry to Tasmania, how well it's going. If you have a government which seems to be telling a story which seems at odds with some of the evidence to the inquiry, how do we work our way through that as Tasmanians to understand what is working?
Well, that's the big challenge that we're facing. And I think what the inquiry really did expose was that the story that's being told by the salmon farming industry or the fish farming industry and the state government is actually in contrast, and it has a clear disconnection with some of the on-ground experiences of both people within the industry and around it. So that is the problem. I was hoping that the inquiry could have probed a bit deeper into some of those government regulations and processes so that we could get some clarity about where the real disconnections or where the downfalls are in terms of ensuring that regulation. But as far as I could see from the hearings, that hasn't happened.
Even the committee itself seems to be a little bit of an uproar. The Senator Jackie Lambie, of course, didn't attend today. Is the committee, to your mind, as an outsider, working effectively?
Well, it was interesting to observe. Certainly, at points in the hearing, I thought that someone who walked in off the street could have interpreted it as just an exercise to promote the employment and GDP that the industry creates for Tasmania, and certainly that was not the intention.
Is that important, though?
Well, obviously the industry is important to Tassie, and we've got no doubt about that. That's never been questioned. And in fact, that's why it's important that it's regulated effectively, because we want those jobs to continue and we want them to be sustainable, but we also want to ensure that other industries that work and value the environment that the aquaculture industry is operating in are not negatively impacted by that industry. So, really it was a goal to actually get a more equitable playing field in terms of looking at impacts, regulations and benefits. And unfortunately, I think that we didn't get much more of an equitable playing field.
You're hearing from Rebecca Hubbard from Environment Tasmania on 936 ABC Hobart. Do you think that the panel is equipped enough to be able to evaluate the scientific evidence that is coming from different corners and is giving what seems to an outsider contradictory advice or results?
Look, I don't know that the committee needs to understand every piece of scientific evidence available. There's a lot of science, and if you tried to do that, you could get pretty bogged down quickly. What the committee, I think, does have the capacity to do is see where there is contradictory evidence being placed on the table. And I also believe that they have the capacity to be able to identify where regulatory processes and management procedures or adaptive management is failing. But I think there may be some unwillingness amongst the committee to admit to that, because as many other people in Tasmania are worried, we don't want to be anti-development and anti-industry. And I think that's a very fine line for some people.
It can be, and just to finish on this, because you raise a good issue, and that is to look at something from a purely analytical and business case and scientific, and whether the science is working and whether the science is clean, up against the emotion of people who've been impacted by fish farming who gave evidence today. How important, I guess, is the social evidence of the fish farming up against the science of whether it's working properly?
Yeah, well, I think the social is very important, because we're a community. We're all living here, and actually it's our public resource. The marine environment is something that every Tasmanian has a share in, and our children have a share in that. So it's fundamental that it's managed effectively and for the benefit of all people, not just one industry or another. And might I say, it's not just about the science, it's actually about the management and the regulation. And I think sometimes there has been a bit of confusion around that. And that is really what's at question here. Is the regulation working? And part of that is, are we getting the right science?
And you hope we'll get the answers to that from this inquiry?
I don't think we'll get all the answers, but hopefully it will bring more information to light.
Speaking of inquiries, there's another one next week in Hobart into the charitable status of environment groups. Are you appearing before that?
One of Environment Tasmania's representatives will be.
Right. Okay. Rebecca Hubbard, thanks for coming in this afternoon.
Thanks, Louise.